We're live. Hey, good evening, Shifties. We're back. I'm back. I'm on the road right now. Well, on the road, not at home, aka not at home. Visiting my daughter in the Atlanta metro area. But I was like, hey, we got to get on this because we got people on schedule, aka Calvin Tang. So, what is Shift the Journey? Shift the Journey is this is an opportunity for me to interview somebody new every week, so they can talk about their career journey. Uh, we've had people on the show who were prior military. We've had people on the show who went from non-tech career to a tech career, and we have people coming up who are like just really interesting stories. And I figured once I had some conversations with Calvin, that I was like, man, I think it'd be fun to hear your story. So Calvin and I, we don't go way back. We go back about a year, I want to say. we
Hmm.
uh, we actually met on the Alteryx community, like the Mavericks community, right? Um, we were working a lot of the same a lot of the same problems. So like let's say you use Alteryx, right? People use Alteryx and they go and it's like, oh, how do I figure out how to parse this data? I have like unstructured data, or how do I pull data from a PDF or from a database? So then, you Google it because that's the life of a developer, right? You Google it and then you see a lot of links to the Alteryx community. And then if you can't find the answer, what people do is they go and they ask a question on the forums there. And then there are people like kind of sitting around waiting for that to happen so that they can answer the question. And I remember a certain time where I would go on like before I started work, answer some questions, go on at lunchtime, answer some questions, go on after work, answer some questions. And it got to the point where like I was on there a lot and I was somewhere in like the top 10 for the month or like last 6 months or whatever. And oh no, Calvin, we lost your picture. But
Oh,
I could
sorry
never
about.
catch up. I could never catch up with this guy. He was always like number one or number two. And I'm like, I'm not even gonna try. But I did learn I did learn a lot, and so super happy to have you on the show, man. Thanks for making it. So
Yeah, happy to.
this is the very first interview that I get to do over the international dateline. So this is fun. The sun's going down here. The sun's well,
Coming.
it's been up over there, right? It's morning,
It's coming
right?
out now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's get started, man. So why don't you just tell everybody where you're from?
Well, originally I'm from Malaysia, but because of my job, I get to travel a lot. So I've been around Asia pretty much. So I'm never in one place. Every other month I'm somewhere else. So yeah, I'm a dynamic spatial object basically.
That's great, man. So,
Yeah.
when you were growing up, did you when did you have an idea that you wanted to go into analytics or automation?
Never. I mean, I just did. I mean, I grew up like everyone else, right? My parents were telling me like, "Hey, go to college. I'm going to study something that can make you money," and I did. I did economics, and some bits of finance here and there. I was
Mhm,
mostly interested in the coding classes that I had. So we were using software
mhm,
like R, and then we were using software like Excel. Excel was still being taught at the time, and everyone else was struggling with it, and I could do it. Just like that. It came naturally to me,
yeah,
and I never thought I would go into data analytics because my first job was basically it was partially analytics. It was just looking at compliance data. So basically, transactions that come in, and you had to look at it, and then you had to analyze it and see if it's fraudulent or not. And then you had to look at
mhm,
ways to automate the transactions so that it's compliant with regulations and stuff. So we had to study it and come up with ideas of flags, and a lot of math was involved. Basically, like
yeah,
if it's above a certain amount, blah blah blah, you had to factor it in. Um, yeah, I just kind of got into it. I never really actively looked for roles in data analytics. I was just good at it, and then you know, things happen,
Yeah.
people found out, and then they hired you, and then keep going. You know, that's basically it.
Yeah. So, you went to school for like finance and economics.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so like, what while you were in school, what kind of job were you thinking that you were going to go into?
Look, you know, I I never met with my career counselors and stuff. I was just assuming that. Uh, Honestly, I was just hoping to get like a banking job or like an economist job. But when I
Yeah.
found out that you needed like a PhD to be an economist, I was like, nah, that's not gonna work out. I mean, that's gonna be like 10 years of my life, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be doing much with my life in the 10 years. It didn't seem right. And banking, I did an internship at a bank, and honestly, it was the most boring job on planet Earth, and it didn't really help because I was working in the reporting department, and I was sitting next to a guy who worked there for like 30 years, and I was seeing him color these Excel spreadsheets day in day out, and he was just looking at the screen, just clocking in, clocking out, and you know, I tried striking up a conversation with him, but it went nowhere, honestly, because the guy was like so zoned in, like changing the colors, changing the template, changing the numbers,
Mm,
and I basically clocked out after 2 months of working there because I couldn't take it. Like I saw that guy and I felt I'm not gonna do that. You know, that's
yeah.
not me. That's not me at all, and it's boring. You know, going in, clocking out. That's not how you live life, right? And
No.
work is a big part of your life. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah. 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 So, once you started, excuse me, once you started to like work on the more like analytical things, did you think, oh, I want to find a career path, or was there a career path in the company you were working for, or did it make you want to go look outside the company?
Well, the first official job I had, right? They did offer me a data science role.
Hmm.
Now, when I was younger, I didn't really know the difference between data science, data analytics, data engineering. I just thought it was all one same thing, right? It was like data, that's it, right?
Hmm.
How many layers can you slice, right? And I was really good at my job, automating it, preparing reports. I was very timely. I could do things really fast. I could learn on my own. And they basically offered me a data science role. And at the same time, another company actually found out that I had the skills that they want. And they thought you could come in and do this transformation role
Hmm.
instead of the data science role. And what appealed to me was that the data science role at my first company was still very BAU focused, business as usual. So you had to churn out certain reports, you had to churn out like some data science visuals, you had to churn out like ideas, and you had to look at things like churn, you had to predict customer churn, you had to predict like customer fraud, things like that. It was
Yeah.
very standard. I didn't want to do that actually because I felt like I wouldn't learn much because there's already a template to follow. You just have to do it. It's basically the same thing I was doing. And the other
Hmm.
company was more exciting because it was an old company. It was a gambling company actually. So uh, they really wanted to transform themselves. They were in the
Hmm.
business for like 40, 50 years, and they never really did analytics at scale, right? It was always just minor Excel reporting, but they really wanted to
Yeah.
go into to data analytics, and they took a chance on me, basically, someone who was learning data science on his own, and went through courses on Udemy, on Coursera, and DataCamp,
Yeah.
and they basically said, look, we want you because you're young, you're energetic, you have ideas. I went through the interview process. They really liked me, and that time was COVID, and my hair was
Oh,
super long,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in Asia, right, people would associate you, especially in the old companies, with long hair as a hippie or something, right?
Yeah.
But they took a chance on me, which I'm still grateful for today. And I spent 2 years, 2 years, 6 months there, and I just clocked in and just made sure to do a good job, great job, and did data analytics, set up the whole foundation, and dashboarding was something that I did as well, and a lot of process engineering. And in that job, I learned a tremendous amount, and that was a job that made me passionate about data analytics and transformation as a whole. And then of course the story repeated itself. I got
Yeah.
headhunted to my current role, which was more international, that allowed me to travel, and that's where it really took off, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. So, did you have like a recruiter come after you each time, or did you was it like did you find your position through networking?
Yeah, it's a mix of both actually. But
Yeah.
I would say that a secret life hack that most people don't know is that your resume doesn't really reach the decision maker. Honestly, your resume goes into the bin most of the time. But if it
Yeah.
goes through a recruiter, it gets to the decision maker, because the recruiter, right? It's all based on incentives, right? That
Yeah.
incentive is get your resume through the door, through the decision maker, so that if you get in, they get a slice of it, right?
Right.
And most of my jobs are through recruiters, and I network specifically with recruiters. Uh, you would find that most often, even if you network with decision makers, like, I went to Inspire, I made friends with the decision makers. At the moment, they would like you, but because of the nature of our jobs, right, and how everyone is double hatting after COVID,
Yeah.
nobody's got time to think about hiring. They're completely outsourcing it to recruiters. So
Mhm.
whoever's listening in, right, and if you're looking for a job, right, the best strategy you can do for yourself right now is just to network amongst recruiters, because they're the
Mhm.
ones that can get you through the door. I mean, that's how the system works right now, and you have to play it that way.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to work with a guy who, well, no, my first job coming out of the military, everybody in my department except for me was placed there by the same recruiting company. And so I was like, "Oh, wow," you know? And then I also, like, later on worked with a guy who never talked to recruiters because he thought it was a scam. He's like, "Oh, this is a scam." And there were other people there who were like, actually, no, I was right here by a recruiter." And he's like, "What?" It was the funniest thing. But no,
Yeah.
it's not a scam. And yeah, I would say that probably I don't know, like 30%. It's a huge chunk. 30% of my network on LinkedIn are recruiters or like former recruiters, you know.
Hmm.
And so every time I applied for a position, I made a friend in the company. It's like I made a connection. It's like, hey, let's have a conversation. Whether they asked me for the conversation or I asked them, but I always said, "Dude, I'm going to send that connect invite." Yeah, that's interesting. So, what's what kind of what kind of career path is there for somebody like you who wants to travel a lot? What were you looking for? Is it like a consulting position, or is it something where you're working for a single company?
Well, it really depends on the industry as well, right? Because I'm
Hmm.
in insurance right now, but I started my career as in fintech, and then I went to gambling, and then now I'm in insurance. I'm very
Hmm.
industry agnostic, so
Yeah.
that comes with some benefits and some downsides as well, right? You won't
Yes.
have strong domain knowledge in the business, which is important, but you will have strong domain knowledge in experimenting with different analytics tools. So that's a big plus, especially now in the age of competition, right? Everyone's trying something new. So
Hmm.
that was one of the things that spurred me on. But if you're looking for a career that allows you to travel, um, and you don't really have the strong technical skills, right? Then consulting is one way to go. You can consider the big three, like your McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or the big four, right? You have your audit departments, like you have your consulting arms as well: EY, KPMG, Deloitte, and PwC.
Hmm.
Or you can go then below as well. You have Accenture, you have other guys as well, like Roland Berger, and stuff like that, right? Now, uh, traveling isn't something that's guaranteed, but
Hmm.
one thing that is guaranteed is transformation. So every company has to go through transformation at some point, and there's an endless number of companies out there, which allows you to look at it. And these companies, you have to look at those which are MNCs, which are basically multinational companies. So I think the majority of your audience is from the US, right?
Hmm.
So the US in itself, with its 50 states, it's like every state is like a country, right? So in America, it's kind of different because
Yeah.
you have a lot of consulting hours, which allows you to go across states, especially in the East Coast, West Coast. You can go around quite easily. Uh, but yeah, transformation is something that will allow you to do that, because if they have branches in different locations, they would definitely need you to travel on site. And regardless of what everyone says right now, you can do it online, blah blah blah. What I found is that if you talk to people in person, it really makes all the difference, and
Yeah.
it sticks. If you talk it through online, right? No, I mean everyone can just turn off their screen and just listen to you blabbering around for like hours, and nobody's gonna give a shit. That's just gonna happen, right? And
Yeah.
and if you go in person, everyone's there. They're dedicated their time to listen to you, to do something with you, and that makes all the difference. Because when you're there physically, you can't really shut yourself down, right? You have to pay attention, and you get to be seen, which is most important. And you
Yeah.
get to involve stakeholders like management to come in and see, look, your team members are doing this, and it's great, and people really buy into that.
Yeah.
Now, the good news about transformation, right, is that it's been here for forever, right? My dad told me like in the 60s, 70s, people were transforming. In the 80s, they were transforming. In the 90s, 2000s, they were transforming. And now I'm telling my dad, hey, I'm doing transformation. And he's like, yeah, yeah, I heard that like 40 years ago. So it's never going to run away, right? So it's just going to
Right.
be here. Right. So
Yeah.
that's one field you can get in, and definitely look for these companies that has branches everywhere.
Yeah.
You have the chance to travel.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about the differences between like data analytics, data science, data engineering. What what kind of, if you were to like categorize your role or
Yeah.
your interests, like where along that spectrum would you fit?
I started out more in data analytics, which is like the front end stuff,
Hmm.
and just doing descriptive statistics all the time, right? That's like the
Hmm.
bread and butter of your job.
Yeah.
Basically, you get the descriptive statistics to the people who are doing prescriptive, or people who are doing a higher level type of work with that data,
Hmm.
or you're just doing the mundane reporting. That's where I started my career, and now I'm shifting more towards data automation, which is more in line with data engineering itself.
Yeah.
Now, the wonderful part about my job is that I'm not in IT, I'm not in tech, I'm actually sitting at the business side. And one of the things that the data science community doesn't really talk about, right, is data science in the business context. Because most data scientists in the business context are very different from data scientists or data analysts or the data people in IT and tech. A lot of it has to do with the access to data, the access to the people, the access to the skills, and what you're doing for that business unit itself. So for me, my mandate is very simple. My mandate is to go in, understand the process, simplify it, automate it, and then free up that person, that business person, to do something of higher value for the company, right? Uh,
Yeah.
when I was in my previous companies, I was sitting in tech, and my role was to accept tickets, look at problems, look at business problems from a
Uh,
higher level, try to solve it for management, and then come up with solutions and stuff. From the
yeah. I
business
mean,
side, it's much more flexible.
oh
Yeah,
yeah. And it's like a totally different mindset. I feel like the people who thrive in the more tech side are very like ones and zeros, black and white. There's no gray area. It's on or it's off. Binary, very like one and zero, right?
yeah,
And like I'm gonna answer this ticket. I'm gonna fix it. Boom, it's done. You're done. But then when it
yeah.
comes to the business side, there's so many variables, right? And
Hmm.
you have to get to know somebody and get to know their business and all that. And oh, hey, look, there's Wilson, man. Wilson has a has a comment. I don't think that's a role thing. That's a company culture thing. That's an interesting point. What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. It is. It is. I mean, I've been in three companies now, right? And all of them have like different ways of segmenting the problem. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So, are you still doing like data visualization type stuff?
Uh, yes, sometimes, but it's mostly just for. I would say it's like data visualization is very subjective, right? It keeps changing, and no dashboard is perfect, basically. And
Yeah.
everyone just uses it. My kind of dashboards are very simple. It's more for telling me if something's up or something's down.
Right.
If there's a spike in activity, how many licenses are going in, going out, things like that. It's very descriptive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, one of the questions that I get a lot from people who are like trying to break into data is like, oh, what kind of job title should I look for? And I'm like, it's not. It's like, no, don't do it. You can't
Yeah.
fall into that trap. There's no such thing as, the standardized job titles in data.
Mm.
It just doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Um, I talked last week. Was it last week? No, the week before last, to a guy who is a senior data scientist, but he's like,
Hmm.
I'm not doing data science stuff. He said he's like doing reporting analytics, which
Yeah.
is interesting to me. But so yeah, so I have a small but I don't know. I was gonna say something clever, but I can't think of. But I have a small audience in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
I used to work with some folks over there in the Philippines, and there's some people I know over there who are um, I want to connect you with. So we'll do that. So
Yeah.
okay, so here's the thing I didn't talk about. I did talk about it in the post that you are an Alteryx ace. So for anybody out there, um, can you tell them what Alteryx is and what an ace is?
So Alteryx is it's a very powerful software, right? I always describe it like a Swiss knife because it can do so much. It can do spatial, it can do database, it can do data prep, it can do some visualization, it can do some machine learning, PDF reading, blah blah blah, all the common stuff. But most of the time, it's used to do automation, do data prep work, and it's drag and drop. It's low code, no code. You can integrate code into it as well, Python R. You can also add like command prompts, and you can even add your custom features as well if you have macros. You can batch, iterate, and you can standardize certain things. And I would say that Alteryx is a very, very powerful tool. That if you know how to use it right, you can do a lot of things with it. And what an ACE basically means is it used to stand for Alteryx Certified Expert, but it no longer stands for that. And now it just stands as a title on its own. It's just ACE. It doesn't stand for anything anymore. It's not an acronym as it used
Hmm,
to be. Um,
interesting.
but ACE is someone who is someone dedicated to the community, someone who can do a lot with the community, both in educating others about the tool. I mean, most of the time, doing it on a voluntary basis. That's one part of it. Another part of it is someone who is active, engaging, someone who is proficient with the tool. You have to be advanced certified in order to be considered an ACE. And someone who is actively engaging with Alteryx and giving feedback, someone who's giving ideas, someone who's always on the community active and trying to help people. Um, I think in order to fulfill that, there used to be a hard criteria for it. Like you had to have a certain X amount of things in the community done before you can get to be considered. And then you had to
Hmm.
have the X factor, which is basically what you're doing outside of the community. I mean, the community at large, like on LinkedIn or in person, or if you're talking to like Sparked, are you teaching students outside? That's what I used to do. Like I would go around to these universities because I get to travel a lot, right? So I'll always volunteer some of my time to go to the universities. Like in Singapore, I went to NUS, the National University of Singapore. In Malaysia, I went to this Heriot Watt University. In Hong Kong, I went around, and you get to educate people. Sounds like being a Microsoft. Yeah, it is. Wilson, you're definitely right. It sounds like being a Microsoft MVP.
It's like
Um,
a brand ambassador, right?
yeah, it's kind of like a brand ambassador. Uh, so whatever you're saying, right, as an Alteryx is, it carries a lot of weight, especially in the community, and we got to represent the ACE community well. So there are certain things that we have to abide by. And I think you have to stay active and just be a good person, basically. You can't be,
Mm.
you can't be a bad person and just be an ACE, right? It doesn't work that
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah. I had the privilege of working with like five aces. When I was at
Yeah.
a certain company, five of my coworkers were aces. That was crazy because at
Wow.
the time there were only like 42 or 43 aces in the world at the time, and we had five of them. That was nuts. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but so what kind of opportunities have you seen open up for you as an Alteryx ace?
Well, funny thing, because I went to Inspire in Vegas, right? And
Yeah.
the number one opportunity I got was people will talk to you more, people will respect you more, and job opportunities are easy to come by. Right? People will
Mm-hmm.
be like throwing job opportunities. They'll be saying, "Hey, do you want to join me? Hey, do you want to join me?" But not many of them materialize, to be honest, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just a spur of the moment thing, right? When they see
Yeah.
you're an ace, then people try to understand. But you'll be surprised to know that not many people know what an ace is because I don't know if this statistic is true. I've not had time to validate it yet, but a lot of the users at Inspire were actually not on the community actively. So they know about the community, they know about the program, they know about the software, but they don't know what an ACE is. They don't know what certain things are. And I've met these some people, right? They're good with the software, they're good with Alteryx, they're good
Mm-hmm.
with the knowledge base articles, they're good with all this, but when you ask them about community, right, they don't really know what's an ace, who's an ace. And
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing was, I can tell you this story because at Inspire, right, the front row seats are reserved for the aces.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, there was this, I was talking to a group of people from, I think they were from New York or something. And they were asking me, "Hey, how come you get to sit in front?" Like, "Oh, because I'm an ace." And then the guy said, "What the hell is that?" And he was just looking at me like, I was like, an ace is basically like, I basically told him what I told you, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I didn't know about that." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I went around because uh, at Inspire, you get these ace lanyards, and you get
Yeah.
the ace T-shirt and stuff, and you stand out, right, like a marketing tool. And people kept asking me, "So what's this? Do you work for like Ace Hardware or something?" People are thinking like,
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
so funny.
yeah.
That's
And
hilarious.
it was funny, right? Because in my head, I used to think that being an ace is like all encompassing, like everyone would know what it
Yeah.
is. But when I went to Inspire, which is like the biggest Outreach event of the year, and there
Mm-hmm.
were people who don't know what it was. It gave me a wake up call, basically. Like,
Yeah.
uh, being an ace is a privilege, yes, but it's not everything at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Man, that's actually a good lesson. So if there's somebody out there who is working on becoming an ace, what what do you have any advice for them for like the best path to take?
Yeah, I went on this Outreach Ace journey 2 years ago, actually, and uh, my manager at the time was very close with another ace called David Pantagron, and he introduced me to David, and I had a chat with David, and he gave me good advice, which I will give to the listeners as well. Now, being an ace is not something you can demand or something you can ask for. It's something that is a privilege because you have to work for, and it's not just answering questions, which I falsely thought it was. Because, like right, Tito, if you answer in the community, it's a race to the bottom, basically, because everyone's just going in and just hey, I have the solution. Mark mine is. Yeah, I was caught in that mindset, but I think
Yeah.
it's looking back, I don't think it's right. Uh, it's more than that, It's not like the number of solutions that you have exceeds 500, therefore you're an ace. No, I don't think that that's right, because there are some people in the community with like thousands of solutions and they're not
Yeah.
aces, right?
Hmm.
And you have people like Bino, you have people like I don't know his name, but I know the users handle like apathetic hell, right? He's pretty good
Yeah.
as well, but he's not an
Oh yeah.
ace, right? Yeah,
Right.
and you have a lot of people who are very active contributors, and then you have people who are very active outside of your community as well, right? You can see on LinkedIn, but they're not aces, right? So
Hmm.
being an ace is really a privilege, right? And of course, you can apply to be an ace, but the best advice I could give, based on what David told me, is that think of what you want to do with that ace title,
Hmm.
and if that something is for the community, then definitely it's worth doing, and whatever you're doing right now will actually point you towards the ace title. If you're doing it just to progress in your career or just to have a fancy title, it's not going to work out, because it's very easy to tell desperation, and it's very easy to tell if it's very easy to tell if it's fake or not. You know,
Yeah.
you can tell if it's genuine.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. So, you mentioned, I can't remember. I know we talked about it in the studio before we went live, but
yeah,
did you say it on live that you're moving to Hong Kong?
yeah. I
You
am.
did
I'm
say it,
moving to
right?
Hong Kong. I didn't say it
So,
yet, but now we said
yeah.
it.
So, how soon are you moving?
Well, it's I applied for the visa like 3 weeks ago, so it usually takes like 4 to 6 weeks. So maybe next
Oh,
week or maybe in early August, I'll know, and then I'll pack my bags and move on. I mean, I already have my bags behind me, so I'm pretty much ready to go. Uh, Hong Kong's an exciting place, man. I love
yeah.
it. Yeah,
So you've been there before.
yeah, many times. I love the place. I speak the language. I know the culture well, and I know the city well. And yeah, I'm very excited. You know, it's at one point in history, I think a lot of people, a lot of your listeners would know, like there were three major cities in the world, right? New York,
Mhm.
London, and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And it's still true today, you know, regardless of everything that's happened to New York, London, and Hong Kong. These three cities are still great cities to work with, to work at. Yeah.
So here's a question. So when I was in the military, I had some friends who met a lot of their job was to like supervise, we call them TCNs, third country
Yeah.
nationals. So it's like we're overseas, we're at a base in a different country, but then there are these people who were from a country not ours and not where the base was, and so they're third country nationals, right? And
Hmm.
almost everyone that my friends met spoke like three or four languages, and it's not common in the United States for people to know more than one language,
Yeah.
or I forget what the name. There's a term for it. It's it's something where like it's something bilingual, but it's like you can understand it, but you can't speak it, which was which was me. I don't know. I say I probably like conversationally, I can do some
Hmm.
Tagalog, right?
Yeah.
I, but for the most part, most people in the United States don't like really speak more than one language,
Yep.
um, unless they're like immigrants or maybe first generation, Americans, right? How
Hmm.
many languages do you speak?
So in Malaysia, right, we're taught to speak Malay, which is national language. So I know that.
Mhm.
English, definitely. I'm speaking to you, right? So you
Yeah.
understand it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know Chinese as well, and Cantonese is basically like a dialect of
Hmm.
Chinese. So I'm familiar with that, and that's it. Four languages and pretty
Oh
solid.
yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's it. Four languages. Yeah. Man, that's pretty cool.
yeah, it is.
So,
Yeah,
oh man. So what are your what are your um when you go into like a new position and you're like going to a different place, since you've
yeah.
traveled a lot, what's your top goals that you set for yourself before you want to move? Because there some people, like, oh yeah, I did like year and a half here and then went on, did 2 years here, whatever. you know um I call them, or I call us, chronic career shifters. Because I mean, in 9 years as a civilian, and I'm working for my fifth company. So
Yeah.
um what are some things that you go, oh yeah, I want to get to this point or surpass these things,
Yeah,
before I move on?
yeah. So I'm not a title chaser. I don't think the only titles that are important to me is like founder and CEO. Everyone else is just playing catch up, right? And it doesn't matter what title you have. Honestly, you can call me a data cleaner or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Because the job and the experience that you have matters for your next move. And in this day and age, everyone's just looking out and thinking that, look, if I get more experience, I get to go here and there. For me, the most important thing when I consider my next move is basically what I'm going to learn, what I'm going to do. Because if I'm not going to be learning much, then I better be earning much. If
Yeah.
it's not both, then it's not going to work out, right? So
Right.
I mean, paychecks are important, right? This is reality. If you can't put food on the table, it's not gonna work out. So there's like two things you have to focus on, which is basically, are you learning and are you earning? And if it's not one or the other, it has to be one or the other. So if it's both, it's the best thing. If it's none, then don't even consider it.
Right.
So another thing I would consider for my move is like, where does this sit with my career, right? What do I plan to do in like 10 years? Because I read a lot, as you can tell. And I follow like Naval Ravikant, who is like one of the founders of Shopify, and he's a really smart guy. And I agree with him because he says like, programmers, especially for us, even in doing things like Alteryx, which is low code, no code, or even
Mm-hmm.
in data visualization or any tools for that matter, uh, there will come a point in your career when you get slower, less likely to learn new things faster, and you will lose out to your competitions, especially from the younger generation or from abroad, especially if it's outsourced, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna you're not gonna win that battle. It's gonna be hard for you to compete, and you can't just spend your life, duck down just doing great things like coding, because eventually you will burn out, and it happens to everyone. And what has been my north star is to be like those people, like Zuckerberg, like Elon. You don't see them coding. You don't see, like Sergey Brin or even Larry Page, right? You don't see them coding when they
Mm-hmm.
went big, right? They went more into management, and how they transition into that is by taking on project roles, taking on an overseer's role, taking on an architectural role, things like that. And I've been shaping my career path to go in that direction instead of just doubling down and being like an ace of an ace, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, doesn't make sense, right? So uh, you have to be good at the technology. That there's no way about it. You have to be good about it. But at the same time, for me in my career, whenever I choose to go anywhere else, it has to contribute to that path, right? It has to go
Mm-hmm.
and lead somewhere higher than what I'm doing right now. It can't just be more of the same with a higher salary. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, dude, how old are you? It's like spitting wisdom. It's like, what? Wait a minute.
I'm 27 actually. I'm 27. Yeah. So
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Um, that's some good stuff, man. That's really good. So, last question for you.
Yeah.
Is there something unique, or just that you're involved in that you want to share about, or anything that you're just passionate about that you would like to share with the
Uh
audience?
Passionate. I mean, I'm always passionate about helping people, right?
Hmm.
It's not just the Alteryx community, right? I used to help people on the Click communities, Tableau as well. I was used to be active. Uh, what they all share in common is just helping people, right? Learning Alteryx. Right now in my company, I'm doing a lot of teaching as well, like teaching people
Hmm.
Alteryx, teaching people how to process engineer. But more important than that, I guess, I'm very passionate about actually speaking with people, right? Like I took the time to speak to you. I woke up at like six a.m. Like, okay, today's the day I talk to Tito. I need to make it right. So yeah, and I'm very excited every time I get invited to these podcasts, or when I get invited to events to speak about anything, right? And as long as it helps other people, I'm very happy to do it. And I'm very happy to spend my time just doing stuff like this. And I think it means a lot to me. And you know, one of the things that really changed me, right, was listening to one of the speeches when I was younger. I went to this LSE event, basically the London School of Economics. They came to Malaysia when I was younger, and they had a very very good speaker who came on, and he said the same things that I'm saying right now, and it inspired me to do it. So that was like when I was give me a second, let me think. I was 16 years old at the time. That was
Mm.
like 11 years ago. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Nice. Yeah, man. Well, you're in the right spot for wanting to help people out because, I mean, this is why this show exists. Is that I just really want to help people. I know I can't help everybody, but I think one of the best ways to help people is to share information, share
yeah,
knowledge and experience, and basically, um, you know, put my hand out and say, hey, if you want to connect with me. So, hey, audience, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, shoot me a connection request.
Yeah, shoot me one as well.
Yeah, you heard the
uh,
man. Yeah, definitely. Well, man, it was so good to have you on here. I really, yeah, it's really good to know that there are other people who, have a heart for the community as well to like help people out in finding their path, really, their
mhm.
their journey. And so, dude, I want to thank you for being my very first interview over the international dateline. Pretty
Yeah,
awesome. Um, I lived in the Philippines when I was 18. I lived there for a year. This is like I'm digressing a little bit, but yeah.
yeah,
But I lived there for a year when I was like 18, 19, and I remember coming home from there, leaving at like 9 o'clock in the morning, leaving Manila, 9 o'clock in the morning, and being on the plane for around 20 something hours, and landing at LAX at 11 o'clock in the morning on the same day. This is the weirdest thing, but
yeah,
but when I went over there, I left. I lost the whole day. It was like 2 days later. I was like, what happened? But
yeah,
yeah. Anyway, technology is awesome, man. I'm so thankful that you were able to come on and we were able to connect. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna end the stream, but we'll talk in the studio. Everybody else, next week we got I always say we have a special guest. Everybody's a special guest, but good friend of
yeah,
mine that I served with in the Air Force, his name is Scott Adams. Scott's an IT guy, and he was in the Air Force for 20 plus years, and he retired somewhere around the time that I did. But we're gonna talk about military stuff, civilian stuff, tech stuff, and we'll probably get into food because he and I used to go eat Korean food all the time, but Korean and Vietnamese food all the time. But
yeah.
anyway, all right, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.